You're about to listen to Shed, conversations about race on Martha's Vineyard, with your host, Eric Adams, a presentation of MVY Radio.
In this episode, Island resident Ian Douglas drops by and shares with us what the words faith in action really mean. Ian has spent a lifetime centered on serving others, particularly marginalized people, both here and abroad. As a bishop in the Episcopal Church, Ian worked closely and developed a lifetime friendship with Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Ian's commitment to anti-racist and social justice work comes from his humble beginnings as a working-class kid in western Massachusetts and continues today right here on Martha's Vineyard. Hello again, and welcome to Shed. Thanks for joining us today. We are blessed, I would say, today to have our guest Ian Douglas with us. For those of you who don't know, Ian holds a master's degree in education and divinity from Harvard and a PhD in religion and culture from Boston University. He is the author and editor of 5 books and numerous articles and reviews. Ian has had a varied vocation in academic, religious, and liberative spaces. In the early 1980s, he lived in Haiti, working for the Episcopal Church of Haiti, helping to establish a school partnership program. For 22 years, he was a professor of global Christianity and post-colonial studies at the Episcopal Divinity School in Cambridge, Massachusetts. There, he was blessed to co-teach with Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who had become a mentor and close friend over the years. While teaching at EDS, Ian worked closely with Visions, an anti-racism and multicultural organizational development consulting firm, and Marshall Gantz, a key community organizer for both Cesar Chavez and Barack Obama. In 2009, Ian was elected Bishop Diocesan of the Episcopal Church in Connecticut, where he served close to 50,000 Episcopalians in 172 parishes and over 350 clergy. Ian, did I get that all right?
Mm-hmm.
I did.
That's correct, yep.
Okay. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Eric. It's great to be here.
Thanks very much for saying yes.
Yeah.
So, to be fully transparent, Ian and I would say we know each other, or maybe we're getting to know each other. We were introduced by a mutual friend at Still Point, and we decided to co-facilitate a men's group together, which we've done over the last several months. And I know that's not really on the bio, but I wondered if we might just start with your thoughts about why you felt it was important to start a men's group on Martha's Vineyard. We started in the winter. I don't know if season makes a difference, but why you felt that was a good thing for us to be doing.
Thanks, Eric. It's a great question. I have to be completely transparent here. Our mutual friend, the executive director of Still Point, when he invited me to think about helping to lead a men's group, he mentioned that I would be doing it with Eric Adams.
That's so funny.
And I'm a huge fan of Shed.
Excellent.
And I thought, boy, the opportunity to work with you was compelling. I don't think I've ever told you that before. But that was an invitation that I couldn't say no to.
That is very flattering. I really appreciate that. And I have to be completely honest. I didn't really have an interest in doing it. I was just really busy and felt like, I don't know if I can really commit to this right away. And then when Thomas told me a little bit about you, and I did a little digging, particularly once I heard that you had this relationship and had worked with Desmond Tutu, I said, I'll do it because I really wanted to do it with you. And I'm really glad we've done this together.
Yeah. I mean, it's been wonderful working with you, Eric. And
likewise.
It's been a real joy.
And I think that the guys that were in the group have really benefited from it. They've said so, right?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. The wonderful thing about the men's group, even though I don't often consider myself such, is that you and I are kind of like the wise old souls of the group.
Careful.
Because everyone's younger than we are.
That's true.
And it's very refreshing to spend time with a diversity of ages, but also, you know, deliberately a diversity across so many different identities in our group as far as service workers, professionals, people who are artisans, black, white, born on the island, born in Brazil, racial differences, ages.
Which wasn't an accident. I mean,
No.
we really, took our time to kind of put this group together.
Yeah. I know I personally had a commitment that indifference is great opportunity. And so if we were going to put together a men's group, why not try to get as many differences represented so it would be that much richer?
And we did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And it's worked.
It's worked wonderfully.
Yeah. I'm not even sure where to start with you, really, because there's so much. I'm tempted to jump into your work in South Africa. I'm really curious about your work in Haiti, because as I recently found out, you are familiar with Paul Farmer, who's the subject of a book, Mountains Beyond Mountains, that I've been reading, and has got me really intrigued into kind of what's happened over the years there. But I think to start, I'm curious most about, you've dedicated most of your life really to racial and social justice and to helping people. And I wondered where that comes from.
Yeah. That's an excellent question.
Good.
I grew up as a working class kid in a mill town in central Massachusetts. And I was exposed to a variety of differences basically along economic lines. And we don't often speak about class in the United States and classism. And I was fortunate enough, my parents had a commitment to education. And I think their fundamental commitment was I had one brother, for my brother and for me to have opportunities in order to cross class. Clearly, my parents didn't want us to be working class. And so education, of course, I was a heterosexual white male, so appreciating the other privileges that go along with that. Education could be a ticket up and out. And I felt keenly, and even though it wasn't until I was an adult could I articulate this, but I felt the class differences. And
Do you remember how, Ian?
oh yeah, I mean, for example, my brother and I went to as scholarship kids, to a local country day school in middle school. At that time, our high school in a city called Fitchburg, where I grew up, Fitchburg, Massachusetts, was unaccredited. So my parents were saying, okay, we're going to send you to a different high school, and this is your way to begin. So we were scholarship kids to a small school, country day school called Appwald School. And I can remember that all of the kids of means, would be invited to a dance school on Friday nights where you learned how to ballroom dance.
Is that something you wanted to do at the time?
I don't know if I wanted to do it or not, but clearly everyone else was being invited. And somehow my brother and I were not.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
And more interestingly is our house where we lived was literally across the street from the church where the dance school was.
Wow.
And I can remember someone referring to us as effectively those towny Douglas boys. And that, according to their narrative, we wouldn't have been interested in ballroom dancing. So we were never given the opportunity. But that was a class statement. Of course, my brother and I did them one better. We were the kids who would buy the alcohol and sit outside the dance school. And when the kids came out, they knew where they could get their beers or their wine, right? So also I can remember, I think it was a teacher at the school referring to my brother and to me, or at least ostensibly, whether it's true or not, getting back to us. We were called those degenerate Douglas boys.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that stuck with you.
Yeah, that stuck with me. And I only as an adult, when I started doing other anti-racism work and looking at how other oppressions work with respect to sexuality, gender, race, and class, was I able to get in touch with some of my own internalized oppression around class, which I think helped me to be more empathetic at the affective level with people who suffer also marginalized identities, either historically or currently. So it was both kind of at the affective level I felt that, but also I was interested in it cognitively. How is the world so socially constructed that there are some who are privileged and some who are marginalized?
And did you ever find an answer to that question? Because it's a great question.
Well, I'm a religious person, and a Christian in particular. And speaking theologically, that's the root of sin. In the Episcopal Church, in our catechism in the Book of Common Prayer, there's a great... The catechism is set up so that there are questions and answers. That's what a catechesis is, right? And so the question is, what is sin? And the answer is really pretty profound. The answer is, it's the seeking of our own will instead of the will of God, thus distorting our relationships with God, with each other, and I would add, and with creation.
I've never heard that definition
Right.
before.
So sin is that distorted from what is intended as a good and generous and just and equal creation. Because in creation, at least in the Judeo-Christian narratives, there is fecundity, fullness, everything one needs in the creation narrative. And it's only when, in this case, Adam and Eve seek their own will, eat of the fruit of the tree, that they're seeking their own will instead of the will of God, and that thus begins the distorted relationship with God and with one another and with all creation. And the rest of the biblical narrative, both the Jewish text, which is, in Christian hegemony would be called the Old Testament. I'd prefer to call it Hebrew Bible. And then the New Testament is the whole narrative. The rest of it is the seeking of right relationship.
Okay.
How do you get back into right relationship with God and with one another? So all those things that divide us one from another in a socially constructed way, I put under the category of disordered relationship, and thus sin.
And so, Ian, did that kind of conceptualization of sin, did your social and racial justice work come from that? I mean, is this your crusade against sin?
No, I wouldn't pretend to have a crusade against sin.
Well,
but
your bio says differently, really.
Right. I mean, here's where I learned a lot from Arch, right, from Desmond Tutu. If one's assumption is that we are all created equal, and we all share in the image of God, then anything that works against that just and whole system is to be labored against. So a right and just world is the bottom line. And anything that departs from that, it's our vocation, particularly those of us who consider ourselves, as far as baptized Christians, laboring against those things that divide us from God and each other is what we're called to do.
So when did Desmond Tutu come into your life?
I was teaching at the Episcopal Divinity School. It was in the mid-90s. Actually, the very first time I met Desmond Tutu, I was working at the Episcopal Church Center in New York City, which was the headquarters of the Episcopal Church in the United States. I had just returned from Haiti, and I was working in the international office of the center and kind of brokering educational opportunities for people from around the world to come to the United States and people who were working outside the United States as far as cross-cultural orientation education. So I was kind of a international leadership education broker. Desmond Tutu was teaching at another seminary in New York City at the time, General Seminary.
Was he living here?
He was on sabbatical, so he was taking a semester.
Okay.
And it happened to be the time when he received the Nobel Peace Prize.
Wow.
So suddenly, this international church leader with whom I had had passing acquaintance because of my work
Okay.
was catapulted towards fame and a much larger stage and audience. And so he came into our offices, and that's the very first time I met him. Then later that summer, he was invited to our general convention of the Episcopal Church, which is every 3 years the Episcopal Church has a nationwide convention to decide who and what we're going to do and believe as the church. Mm-hmm. It's very democratically organized and run. There was an evening event with 2 leading Episcopalians in conversation with each other. And it was Desmond Tutu and George Bush.
Oh my gosh.
And it was amazing because, of course, at that point in time, Desmond Tutu was an undocumented person. Mm-hmm. He had no papers from South Africa because he was not considered during the apartheid era. Mm-hmm. He did not have the freedom to travel in that regard. Mm-hmm. So he didn't have any passport. And George Bush, I think, was something in the State Department. And the way he joked with George Bush saying, well, of course, in your eyes, I'm not here. So it was just delightful. So those were kind of the 2 vignettes when I thought, this person's pretty wise.
Yeah.
Then later, when I was in the 90s at the Episcopal Divinity School, his daughter, Empho Tutu, was a student of mine. And I was her tutor in her senior year and got to know Empho quite well. And Desmond and Leah Tutu were having a sabbatical again. So he was invited to come to EDS, where he taught a course on international reconciliation. And he and I co-taught it, which meant basically I was going to be the straight man to his jokes for a semester, which was great fun.
And he's got quite a sense of humor from what I know.
Yeah, I mean, of blessed memory, of course. He was just so filled with joy. Mm-hmm. I think it just was effusive, his sense of joy. And then later on, to round out the story, when I was ordained bishop of the Episcopal Church in Connecticut, I wrote to him and invited him, and he preached at my ordination.
Wow.
So that was kind of a nice end circle. But all through it, he and Leah, his wife, became kind of close family friends. Mm-hmm. Come to our house for dinner. Our kids still joke around that we had to make sure we had rum raisin ice cream on hand. Haagen-Dazs rum raisin ice cream on hand when he came because it was his favorite. Yeah.
So I assume everyone knows who Desmond Tutu is,
right?
But I don't know that that's true. And I mean, can you just tell us a little bit about the importance of him, particularly in relation to the deconstruction of apartheid in South Africa?
Right. Desmond Tutu was a priest in the Anglican Church of Southern Africa, which is the South African cognate like to the Episcopal Church, part of that larger. Those churches that descended from the Church of England and where English colonies were and the church was planted. And when those nations became independent, there were new Anglican churches in those places. Mm-hmm. In these shores, it's called the Episcopal Church. In South Africa, it's called the Anglican Church of Southern Africa.
Okay.
So he was a priest, came up through the process as far as parish seminary, parish work, etc., but was particularly noted as the head of the South African Council of Churches during the anti-apartheid struggle.
So we're talking about through the 70s and into
In
the 80s?
Yep, that's exactly right. And as the head of the South African Council of Churches, which was a major force in the anti-apartheid movement, supported by the World Council of Churches, that gave him a global, if you will, stage.
Okay.
He was a very strong spokesperson for the disinvestment campaigns.
Okay.
And that was also under the rubric of the South African Council of Churches. He was very close to the most of the liberation efforts that were happening with respect to anti-apartheid efforts. He became Bishop of Johannesburg. He was elected bishop, so he left the South African Council of Churches. The way it works in our churches, not so much in the United States, but clearly in South Africa, is that then there is what's known as an archbishop that gets elected from the diocesan bishops. You know, we just saw conclave, right? So he was elected as the Archbishop of Southern Africa, which gave him even a larger audience, both within the church and also nationally and globally.
Okay.
In 1983, I believe it was, when he was not yet elected Archbishop, I think, he was given the Nobel Peace Prize for his leadership in anti-apartheid. In many ways, I think he was the social conscience of the anti-apartheid movement.
What makes you say that?
Well, when apartheid ended and the nation needed to be healed, he was invited by the president to be the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So as the chair of the TRC, that was the place where ostensibly the healing of the nation was to occur, where people would come and tell their stories and face their accusers and face one another, face those who were abused and murdered loved ones, and really kind of see the humanity in each.
At the time that they tackled that with the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, as far as I know, I don't remember ever hearing about anything like that before.
Well, how often do we tell the truth?
That's a good question.
I mean, imagine if our nation really began to tell the truth about how our whole economic system and our political system was built upon a system of enslavement. I mean, that's just still not recognized. There's agitation for truth and reconciliation efforts in the United States, but I
haven't seen them gain any kind of traction.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about us as a people that, and I know that there are some of us that would love to see that happen, but I think as a whole, it's something that we're either disinterested in or afraid of.
I would put the ownership on people like me, and that would say white supremacy presupposes that the privilege that I have because of my whiteness, I'm not going to give up. And this goes back to Desmond, those who are caught up in their privilege are as bound up in a system that denies their full humanity as those who are marginalized. That's kind of Desmond Tutu 101. I remember when he and Leah were at our house one night for dinner, and my father-in-law was there, and it happened to be when the successor TRC justice movements in a post-apartheid South Africa were going through cases. And there was, I can't remember his name, but he was known as the Butcher, was released or not indicted, I think. And my father-in-law asked Desmond, how do you square that? Here was the person one of the most ruthless supporters, advocates of the apartheid system. And Desmond said he too is made in the image of God.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows how far he's strayed from that. And that's his greatest punishment.
Do you believe that?
Yeah, I believe that our liberation is caught up in every person, every part of creation,
Mm-hmm.
living the fullness of a just, fair, and whole creation. Yeah.
Do you think we as a country, and I know it's really hard when you're speaking about us as a country, we're very fractured and lots of different segments. People believe lots of different things. But do you think we understand how far away we've gotten from these, not just ideals of Christian values, but also what's really laid out in the founding documents of our country?
The worst part of it right now is that with the movement around Christian nationalism, which I would subscribe and say is neither Christian nor nationalist, it's built on a white supremacist agenda and is not gospel. How someone can read Scripture, specifically the Christian canon, and read the story of who Jesus was and is and what he espoused, and come to a conclusion that a ranking of people is gospel. Have you read the story?
But but Ian,
Right.
you know that it happens. It's happened. I mean, there's been passages from the Bible, and I'm no theologian for sure, that have been used to justify slavery, for example. Do you know William Barber in North Carolina?
Yeah, Bishop Barber, yeah.
Said something that I will never forget. I can't remember where and what form it was, but he said, why is it that people say so much about what the Bible says so little, and so little about what the Bible says so much?
My response to that is amen.
That was mine too.
Amen, right.
I never heard it before, but wow, it felt so good to hear him say it.
It's true.
Yeah.
He's absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't true, why would, for historically enslaved peoples and other marginalized peoples around the world, gravitate to that narrative if it didn't have that power, that truth? Why would Desmond Tutu, as an overt Christian, be the leading person because of his faith in the anti-apartheid movement? Why would Bishop Barber be the leading person with respect to moral Mondays and the kind of social conscience if he wasn't reading a narrative that gave him the power to say that?
Do you think the church is standing up enough for what's happening now with this kind of, as you say, this move to white Christian nationalism?
Depends which church you're talking about. I don't know if you've seen most recently, and pride is not a good thing to have. Let's say this way. I'm pleased with the leadership of the Episcopal Church, who, historically since the 1940s, the Episcopal Church has been one of 10 major resettlement agencies of people from around the world coming to the United States.
Okay.
So refugee resettlement has been a big part of the Episcopal Church's work, along with other groups too. Jewish communities and others, Lutherans. And two things have happened. First of all, refugee resettlement has been completely curtailed under the current administration, except for, as you well know,
white South Africans.
Afrikaners, white South Africans. And so our church, the Episcopal Church, specifically our presiding bishop, Sean Rowe, took a very hard stand and say, we will not participate in receiving any more United States government money, even if there were refugees coming to the United States. and we will not help to settle the white South Africans.
Wow.
The Episcopal Church taking a stand against
That's fantastic.
white South Africans.
You've got to feel good about that.
Yeah.
I feel good about that.
It's
and
not
I'm
bad.
not Episcopalian.
Yeah, there you go. Mind you,
Yeah.
we need to be really humble and honest. The Episcopal Church has absolutely participated in the realities of sexism and racism and classism, and still suffers from that.
And you have helped the church with that. Is that not true?
Well, I hope I've helped to hold a mirror up to the church so that we can do our honest work.
Mm-hmm.
That's my hope.
And what's the response been?
I think I've seen movement in my lifetime.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a child in the Episcopal Church, I extolled the democratic processes of decision-making in the church through our General Convention.
Mm-hmm.
Women didn't get the right to vote until 1970 in the Episcopal Church.
Mm-hmm.
They could not be deputies to General Convention until 1970. Women were not ordained until 74 irregularly and 76 officially. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is absolutely right. Sunday morning at 10 o'clock is the most racially divided time in our nation. That's still true in the Episcopal Church.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a place where, the downtown big church was built by the mill owners, and the little church in the ethnic neighborhood built for the working class group.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of truth-telling to do in our church, too,
Mm-hmm.
before we start, patting ourselves on the back about how holy and righteous we are.
Do you feel like there is a real desire for that to happen? Or are people kind of, okay, I know we need to, we'll get to it, or is there a real appetite for that?
Here I'll use a classic visions methodology, say, yeah, both and.
Okay.
I believe that people can feel the power and the freedom in truth-telling.
Mm-hmm.
And giving up our historic privileges is no easy thing.
That's right.
Okay.
There's not a lot of examples in history
Right.
of people in power just willingly sharing power with the marginalized groups in their society. It just
Right.
doesn't happen very often.
Right. Okay, I'm not going to preach, okay?
Okay.
But I can't help but say, in the Christian narrative,
Mm-hmm.
imagine God giving up God's power
Hmm.
on a cross for the sake of humanity. There is a model for us.
Okay.
And in the end, the powers of death and destruction cannot prevail. And there's new life. There it is. That's gospel. Right. Okay, end of sermon.
Okay. I don't mind the sermon, and I actually feel like I could use a bit of that
Right.
in my life. I didn't grow up, going to church, but
Right.
I've always admired and envied people of great faith. I've always felt like they've had something up on me, something that I wish that I've had. And my sense of faith has developed over time, but not to a certainty like I hear a lot of other people talk, like I hear you talking about.
I hope I'm not certain, because there's danger in certainty.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that what I'm saying is that there is a solid foundation on which I can walk
Okay.
in my day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean I know where I'm going in that walk, but there's a solid foundation that in the end, life is greater than death. And wholeness is greater than fragmentation. And difference as compared to homogeneity is fundamentally of the Creator.
I could hear that every Sunday. I really like that.
I'm not in the
You're not
pulpit
really
anymore.
anymore.
No.
I'll call you when I need a
Right.
dose of that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I got to admit, I'm not completely satisfied with your answer about how you got into dedicating your life to racial and social justice. And that's my truth. You're not saying that, but
right.
from the outside looking in, I hear and acknowledge the roots of classism and how that played a role.
Yep.
But I also know a lot of white guys who grew up
Right.
very similarly and are not passionate or even maybe care or acknowledge
Right.
the fact that there is white supremacy in this country.
Right.
So you're not just talking the talk, but walking the walk in a way that, from where I'm sitting in my life experience, particularly most white men are uncomfortable with. I know when we had the protests in George Floyd, I think the most underrepresented group of people that were out there protesting were white men. And my thought was that they assumed they had the most to lose and not much to gain if we really face up to our racist roots.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that. The sad thing is that once again, a la Desmond, those white guys are so imprisoned in their privilege.
Yeah.
They don't know the freedom that's possible when they acknowledge the truth, which is just freeing.
Yeah.
You don't have to carry all that baggage of maintaining oppressive structures.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
It's heavy.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Also, I have to say, I was so fortunate, privileged, blessed, whatever language you want to use, when I was on the faculty at the Episcopal Divinity School.
Mm-hmm.
There was a close community of great differences: age, gender, sexuality, race, religious identity. I mean, our New Testament professor was a devout and faithful Jew. Our New Testament professor.
Mm-hmm.
And that community was a place that held me, pushed me, invited me, chastised me. But not just me, all of us. That was this community that we were doing our work together and individually. So,
Mm-hmm.
And being there for 22 years, it helped to form me.
Mm-hmm.
I think living and working in Haiti was another place that completely formed me.
Could you tell us a little about that?
Sure.
And what time period was this?
Yeah, it was 1983 and 1984.
Mm-hmm. So is this Papa Doc Duvalier
No, it's
time?
Baby Doc.
Baby Doc? Okay.
Right, the end of the Duvalier regime.
Mm-hmm.
The Tonton Macoute, the secret police, volunteer secret police, still ran the country. So,
And can you tell us a little bit about what they were like there?
first of all, I loved being in Haiti.
Did you?
It was one of the most wonderful places where I've ever lived or worked.
Huh.
I loved it.
How long were you there?
About a year,
Mm-hmm.
right? About a year. The dynamism, the spiritual vitality of the Haitian people, the strength and the integrity. Appreciating, don't forget it was the first black republic
Mm-hmm.
in the Western world.
That's right.
I mean, it gets a bad rap, but it's incredibly proud and it's so tragic what's happening now.
Some would say they paid the price for being the first free black republic in the world.
Yeah, I think that. And the amazing thing that often is underappreciated is that at the time of independence, 1804, the replenishment rate of the enslaved peoples was about 50% annually.
What do you mean by that?
So about half the people who were enslaved and working in the fields would die annually and would need to be replenished.
Wow.
So at the time of independence, the majority of people were either first generation or had been born in West Africa. So it's an intensely West African
Mm-hmm.
community.
Mm-hmm. When their culture, their customs, their history.
Their religion, their
Yep.
history, right. And I could tell some stories there because my wife was a Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa, and what she was able to observe about Haitian, even to the way that the market ladies stacked their potatoes on the ground in the market.
Went back to West Africa.
Right,
Wow.
right. And the drumming, and particularly in voodoo ceremonies, I mean, it's all West African. Scarring.
Mm-hmm.
It was just one of the most alive places I've ever been.
The most alive places.
And perhaps the most economically destitute I've ever been. And I've traveled extensively around the world, and I haven't seen a place as economically destitute as Haiti was and is.
Over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, too, is both, that's another both and. their economic base was that of colonialism
Mm-hmm.
and an enslaved economy. So it's not like they ever had a solid economic base.
Mm-hmm.
And they were ostracized from the Western world
Right.
economically and politically, because you don't want this country being run by free blacks to infect.
Right.
Although Simon Bolivar in his liberation movements often was supported by and left from Haiti in his campaigns.
Oh, I did not
Which
know
is why
that.
a lot of South African flags have red and blue in their
Oh,
flags.
no kidding.
Yeah, in honor. And, I learned things, of course, living and working in Haiti, that being educated in white supremacist America, I was never told.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us an example?
Yeah, perfect
thanks.
example is, the narrative I was given was that the negotiation to buy what would become the western part of the United States was done because he was a good deal maker.
Mm-hmm.
The Haitian narrative is that if they weren't fighting for their independence, which became one of the most expensive campaigns for Napoleon to wage, that he wouldn't have sold the Louisiana Purchase
Wow.
because he needed the cash in order to fund the campaign in Haiti. And at the time, Haiti was the most highest producing economic colony of France.
Is that right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
With sugar?
yeah, sugar.
Yep.
Right. So if it wasn't for the Haitian revolt and independence movement, the Louisiana Purchase might not have ever happened.
That's a trip.
And the western part from the Mississippi West
Might
could be
have stayed
French speaking today.
That is a trip.
Great story. I was working in a rural part of Haiti, and a young man who was my age, and because I was in my early 20s, said to me, Ian, and we were speaking Creole, he asked me, and my name I used was my middle name, Theodore, because it was easier to say than Ian. So he said, Theodore, why are you a missionary? And I said, I'm not a missionary. What do you mean? Because of all the baggage attached to that
Yeah.
cultural
Yep. Appropriation.
And I said, I'm not a missionary. He goes, what do you mean I'm not a missionary? I said, well, I'm not a missionary. I'm not here to convert you.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they had been Episcopalians there ever since the black Episcopalian leader, James Theodore Hawley, left the United States. That's another story, which is important. But since the late last third of the 19th century, there had been Episcopalians in Haiti. He goes, I know, but wait, let me see. You're a Christian, right? And I said, right. He goes, you're an Episcopalian, right? You've come from the Episcopal Church in the United States to the Episcopal Church of Haiti to work here, right? And it's because of your faith that you've traveled this far. He goes, right. He goes, tell me how that's not a missionary. And then when I gave him my guilt-conscious shtick, he said to me, look, as long as you're making it about your guilt not being a missionary, you're making it about yourself. So if you want to come here and work with us and help the church here to develop and be in relationship with the church in the United States, we're happy to have you. If you're here for any other reason, go home. But don't say you're not a missionary.
How did that feel at the time?
It was, scales from my eyes, log out of my eye, whatever. And then the bishop, a very princely, kind of regal guy, the first Haitian-born bishop, when it was time for me to come back to the States, heard I was leaving and said, I'll drive you to the airport. Normally he has a driver, but the only thing you could say to this bishop was, yes, bishop, oui, monseigneur. So I said, oui, monseigneur. So he picked me up, drove me to the then L'Aéroport du Valais, and we were on the observation deck, and his name was Luc Gagne, Bishop Gagne, Monseigneur Gagne. He said to me, Theodore, you've been with us a year, oui, monseigneur. You've traveled the whole country and worked with all of our parishes, oui, monseigneur. Now you're going back to the United States to work for the church there, oui, monseigneur. He said, good. I hope you've learned something here, Goes, I've learned a lot. Oui, Monseigneur. He said, good. Now your missionary work begins.
Back in the States.
So I've been kind of living into that. I was sent here by the Haitian Episcopal Church to do this work. Right.
Do you feel that at all in
Yeah,
some sense?
I feel a responsibility to the Haitian folk who helped educate me as a young, naive, white kid to someone who is about the liberative possibilities, good news of the gospel. Yeah.
I can't think of a group of people who have both been more kind of marginalized internationally, but are also just incredibly resilient. And that's something I've learned recently too, just about the resilience of the people and what they've been able to do, often with nothing. No infrastructure, no running water, no healthcare systems.
Yeah.
Really no police protection, nobody who's really looking out for the most vulnerable people there.
And they're some of the proudest people that you'll ever meet. I mean, they know their history of being the Black Republic.
Any desire to go back ever?
Oh, yeah, I've been back a few times.
You have?
I wouldn't go right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just disastrously
tough.
dangerous, right? No, I've been back, and the nice thing is the church there is still connected and part of the Episcopal Church here. So, yeah.
Here's something I meant to ask. So, I know that when I first came to Martha's Vineyard, it was in 1976, and I grew up in suburban Philadelphia, and things were and are very segregated in Philadelphia. And the suburbs, we had just gotten on the other side of white flight, so like a lot of the kids I grew up with, their parents had left the city to get away from black families moving into their neighborhoods. So there was just racism was just in the air. Sometimes it was overt and other times it was just there. I know I always felt it as a biracial kid and was pretty comfortable walking in both worlds. I could feel it. When I got to the Vineyard for the first time in 1976, almost right away, I was like, I don't feel it here. And since then, it's been confirmed. Every year I would come back, we'd come back for a couple of weeks. It just seemed like this. And listen, I know that there is racism that exists on Martha's Vineyard. However, it just felt like a place that was as free from that as it could be. So I didn't plan on living my life here, but I think in some ways I was finding my way here, and I'm so glad that I'm here. And I wondered what your relationship to the Vineyard is, and if you felt those things being here.
Short answer, yes. My first relationship with the Vineyard was through Trinity Church in Oak Bluffs, the Episcopal Church. Our local priest in Fitchburg was part of the normal rotation of clergy in that summer chapel. Close friends with my parents, so we would come down during the summer, stay in the vicarage for some time with the clergy person and their family. We were close families. And the wonderful thing about Trinity Church at that point, and still today, is that significant leadership and numbers of the congregation are African American. So, I mean, it's every bit a part of OB. And, the African American intelligentsia. And so I was gifted with an experience of the African American Episcopal Church, in part, not fully, but in part, through, and I think I was 10 and 12 years old then. So that was 68 and 1970. So I had a sense of, this is different than the church I knew in Fitchburg, which was dominant white.
Was there any value placed on that, like different or better or worse?
Because of racism, I don't think it was acknowledged overtly, except that Bishop Burgess, who had been the first African-American diocesan bishop in the Episcopal Church, who had retired to Vineyard Haven, worshipped during the regular, like we do at Grace Church. And there's actually and his daughters still live on the island, I think. There is a stained glass window honoring him
In Grace Church?
in Grace Church with Absalom Jones, the first African-American priest in the Episcopal Church from Philly,
Wow.
honoring him. So Bishop Burgess was still, I think he was still alive, but the Burgess. So clearly black leadership was acknowledged, and the senior wardens, Mr. and Mrs. Rawlings and others, Betty Rawlings, and there's still significant black leadership in that parish. It was not acknowledged that this is a partly, if I don't want to say primarily, but significantly black space in the church. Only later in life did I appreciate the racism even within the black Episcopal Church with respect to darkness. I began to feel that this was a different kind of space.
Yeah.
When I met Kristen, my spouse, her parents in 1983 built a house in OB, and so that's where we started spending summers. So it was nice to be in a space, and then, you know, when I was an academic and teaching and doing this anti-racism work in Cambridge, but there's not a lot of places where proximal space can be, where differences come into close and meaningful relationship, and clearly racially in Oak Bluffs that was true.
Yeah.
So when we would be here as a family, that was important. The church we went to in Cambridge was very significantly made up of African American and Afro-Caribbean peoples. When my daughter moved here full time to start her farming, Kristen and I, when I was leaving Connecticut, where I'd been bishop, where did we want to be? Well, all of our kids come here as their place that they would gravitate towards. Not that we live in the family house. We don't. It's just shared between my spouse and her three brothers. But it's where our kids come to relax, and it's where our youngest, Joanna, lives and farms. So we thought, okay, if we want to move close to our kids, we're going to the Vineyard.
Not bad.
Not bad. And we've been very fortunate to be able to live here. And you're absolutely right. Maybe it's because we have a significant boundary that, you know, goes all around us in the water.
Yeah. Keeps us all together.
Whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
It's like Kristen was joking the other day. She said, we're here as islanders, Washer Shores and islanders, and then there's off island. So when people say I'm going off island,
It could be anywhere.
it could be anywhere, and no one ever
doesn't
asks
even matter.
where. It doesn't even matter. You know, it's like, you know, there are cell phones, but, you know, forget it. You know, I'm going off island. That means
It could be the Cape or California.
Exactly.
And nobody really cares.
Right.
And when you come back, you're back on island,
Right.
and that's when we reconnect.
Right.
That's really funny.
And the proximal space, I mean, this is an amazing story. I think, you know, we built our net zero home right on a very kind of public corner in Vineyard Haven. It's a two-family home. Our daughter and her partner live upstairs. And it's fairly obvious where we live, the corner. So a lot of people, if you're driving into town, if you're leaving town, coming down Franklin, you have to go by our house. So people are watching it being built. And, of course, we built it modularly, so it went up quickly. And we always invited people in who were interested to see it because it's a public space in many ways. This was amazing. Kristen and I were standing in front of our house. I think we were looking at plantings or something, trying to figure out what piece. And this person drove up in a pickup truck, mid-50s or 40s, rolled down his window and yelled out the window, "Hey, do you live here?" And we said, "Yeah, we do." He goes, "My wife and I have been watching you build this house. You've done such a nice job. Thank you so." We said, "You want to come in?" He
He
said,
thanked you.
and I said, You want to come in? He goes, no, I have to get home, but my wife and I live. And then he told us where he lived. And we're often sitting out on the porch. You come by and have a cup of tea with us, and we'll stop by and see you. And then he said, welcome to the neighborhood. And I said, thank you so much. And the guy was African American.
No kidding.
Where in the United States would a black man, younger than these two elderly white folk, have the sense of homeness to be able to roll down his window and yell out the window to this white couple, hey, do you live here? Welcome to the neighborhood.
Yeah, Ian.
I mean, and his family's probably been here for 150 years.
Yeah.
It is his neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right.
And he just assumed that you would feel comfortable coming over to see him and visit them on their porch.
Right. And vice versa. He'd stop by and see our place. Right.
Are you still in contact with him?
I see him around the neighborhood. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. It's something that this island community has great differences. Right? I mean, socioeconomic, ethnic, cultural, racial, huge differences. And we live in close proximal space.
We do.
And that's a huge gift.
Thanks for listening to Shed. In addition to you, the audience, we'd like to thank some of the folks who help us put this podcast together and bring it to you. Amy Schumer and Martha's Vineyard's own Chris Fisher. Dana Edelman for providing that funky music to start us and take us out. We'd like to thank Ray Whitaker for providing all the expertise behind the microphone. And of course, none of this would be possible and wouldn't have happened if Dana Nunes didn't stand up.
You've been listening to Shed, conversations about race on Martha's Vineyard, with your host, Eric Adams. A presentation of MVY Radio.